Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and your moderator. I'm also the creator of thechocolatelife.com. Today, we've got a special guest, Tom Rogan, and Gif Laube trying to connect in from Nicaragua. Hey,
Yeah.
Tom, how are you today? Let me see if I can change my view and get you here.
Okay.
Great, I can hear you. We're having some connection problems with GIF. I can see that he is in the private chat, but for some reason we're having a challenge with his audio and video. Not entirely certain what the problem is. He
Okay.
says that he's got a good reception, but he is 40 kilometers from somewhere. And so hopefully we'll be able to get him fixed. But in any event, GIF, if you go into the private chat, you can respond and we can talk about things that way. And you can tell me if I'm completely off base or completely wrong or whatever it is that we can do. For the time being, however, please be in the background and do that. But in any case, Tom, hey, thank you very much for joining us here today. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I was in your place in Sudbury, Massachusetts, back in late March or early April. Had a chance to see you for the first time. I was there with my daughter. And today we're talking about this new bar that you released called Yasica Especial. We have GIF in the chat. If not in the live stream, hopefully we'll do it, to talk about the beans and what's so special about those beans. Now, before we get into all of that, what I want to do is I want to go and say to everybody, hey, this is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com right now. People may know that. If you are there, or people who are regular visitors here will know that for every single one of these posts, I put together, or for every single live stream, I put together a post, and you have links and we have information. I'll put some other stuff back here for everyone later that you can respond to, so you don't have to follow along with everything we're doing today. The links and everything will be on that page when we get done. So, Tom, what I want.
Hi, Clay. How are you?
I'm fine. It's like rapid fire. I mean, I'm going and doing this because that sort of like all of this stuff would be things that we would take, most of it we would take care of in the few minutes before we actually went live. And because you popped in just as we started, it's like, and all this stuff we have to do. It's the nature of going live and the nature of being,
I have some experience with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure we all do. So the first thing I wanted to do here was to do a quick unboxing. Now, I just wanted to let everybody know that I have yet to actually open up the insides of this box. I got it last week. But I want to say, what?
I hope we packed it correctly.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. But it is again, the nature of live TV and unboxing. And I want to say that, is this a new shipping format for you, or is it one you've been using for quite some time?
Same size box. We started printing them last year. So that the printing is new.
Okay, guys, I mean, I got to say, I love the box. It sort of reminds me of a shoe box, the way it opens. And
that's really what we're trying to say to people when they open the box. We want them to think shoes.
Well, yeah, because why not?
Maybe, is this not a giant? Maybe I should I'll be more serious. Okay, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm glad
no. I mean, often what happens when people ship chocolate, they ignore the unboxing experience, right? And I think that when you've got an upscale brand, which is where Goodnow Farms presents itself, and I'm doing a chocolate which retailed at $35 a bar or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, $35.
Yeah. That it's important that the unboxing experience sort of match the rest of the experience. So you've got it looks like a custom made Mylar envelope, right? And I open it up, and inside you sent me a couple of sheets of collateral information and more collateral information and even more collateral information. I have all this background.
Three important pieces of information being communicated there. Yeah.
Right. So I've got a little bit of wonderful shred as packing material, right? I used to use that a lot. And then we have the bars. And thank you very much for being generous with these bars.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
I
I want to
yeah, I
note one
mentioned.
thing. I just want to note one thing on the packaging. You mentioned the Mylar. We're working really hard to make everything we do come fully home compostable. We just did a completely 100% home compostable gift box, which is really hard to do because a lot of packages say, oh yeah, compostable, but they're not really. Like the glue that's used in most boxes not compostable. So
Right.
this one was, but we're working. It's really hard as a small company to find viable options for that kind of stuff. So we're getting there.
Right, and particularly about home compostable, because many things that are mentioned to be compostable are actually compostable in a municipal facility, which is
Nobody has.
got
Yeah.
anaerobic reactors. It's not something you can just like put in the backyard.
Yeah.
I will say that the glue on your stickers is a little strong because I'm having trouble removing the sticker without tearing the paper. But
I agree. And here's the thing: we had a sticker before that was very easy to remove and put back, but it wasn't fully home. You'll see on the sticker it says 100% home compostable. So again, like these are the trade-offs that you make as a small business. Like the packaging, it can be more frustrating, but it's home compostable. So it's trying to find that to educate people about that.
I understand completely. So I've got the bar, I've opened it up. And, one of the things that we learned from research is, using this foiled gold as an indicator of a premium and luxury product. So, you get that sense immediately just from looking at it that this is, that sort of product. And I noticed that the label is put on top of it. So you're actually not printing the label. You have, although on the, oh, no. I mean, the outside is in fact printed to be very, very specific to the Yasica Especial bar. So absolutely, very, very cool. So opening it up, it arrived in great condition. Arrived in great condition. And we've got a lip and tape bag, which I assume is 100% home compostable.
Yeah, that one, is it crinkly when you, we just moved recently to 100% home compostable. So if it's crinkly, it's home compostable.
Great. So, as I know with, most of your bars, it's a beautiful, beautifully tempered. It's a wonderful mold. There are no obvious defects in the surface. So, it's a beautiful presentation. So before we jump into the tasting, tell me about this bar. And unfortunately, GIF is in the background. He says his camera mic can't handle the stress.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that's a challenge. So what I do want you to do, GIF, is I want you to stay in the stream. And what we'll do is, if you have comments that you'd like to make, we can make sure that you can put them in the chat. And then what I can do is I can go grab the chat and then copy some of the responses that you give in the chat into the post on the Chocolate Life.
Yeah, so, and then Tom, if I did something wrong, let me know so I can correct it.
Well, I mean, that is an interesting question. So, I want to do, and I want to talk about that. So, so Tom, tell me about number one, your relationship with GIF, how this bar came about. And even at $35 a bar, if you've got like 50 kilos of beans at 70%, you're talking somewhere around 600, 750 bars at the absolute most, right at the upper end, which means that even at that price, break even is going to be a real challenge on the first production. But tell me about how this fits into Goodnow Farms. Overall idea about the chocolate that it wants to make, the relationship with GIF, and how this all came about, because I think that that's what we want to focus on for today.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, GIF and I met back in the 70s when we were both working for the CIA undercover Latin America. Some really iffy, stuff back, but he always had my back, which was the important thing.
True story?
Not a true story. No. So we met at a conference, a cacao conference in Managua. And actually, I think this is back when we were starting our company, and we were reaching out to a lot of different farmers in Latin America to try and make direct relationships. And I think that we had actually connected with him by email. It was a word of mouth thing. It was just, hey, these people have good cacao. This person, try this person. So we were doing a lot of outreach, and we had gone to a cacao conference in Managua. And right after that, we went, we'd also heard about GIF. So we went and visited him right after that. And we knew immediately that this was somebody we wanted to be working with. I mean, he's got a great approach to the quality of the cacao, how he's working with all the farmers in the area. He had a long-term plan for what he wanted for his farm. And at the time, his farm was really small. He was just starting to plant, but he was working with a lot of people in the area. And we went and visited a lot of the folks he was sourcing from, and he paid a premium, and he paid his workers on the books. And it was a really great approach. And of course, the cacao was incredible. And we worked with him. We have our specific flavor profiles we're going to. So like we do with all of our farmers, we said, hey, can we make some modifications and try this and that? And he was totally up for it. And so the cacao we get from him is awesome. On that very first trip when we were there, and you can tell me if I'm going on too long, he brought us to the area near the Yasica River where he was planting these trees. And he told us about the long-term plan, how he had found these trees. He had a tree, had it genetically tested, and it was a criollo, and he was planting this stand. It was separate from all his other trees, so as to prevent cross-pollination, and he was hoping it was going to produce something. It took a very long time. I think it was a much longer plan than he was anticipating. It took almost 10 years. But the seeds of that, pun intended, were literally sown on that very first trip to Nicaragua.
Right. So do you remember what year that was by any chance?
Well, it was either I think it was late 2015.
Okay. So what I want to do real quickly is share my screen here, and I'm going to put a link to this map. So I apologize that this is going to be relatively small, but what I want to do is I want to situate people into the area where we are. So I'm going to close up right now, and I'll zoom back a little later so you can get an idea of where we are in terms of Nicaragua. But down here in the lower left-hand corner, my cursor is moving, is Matagalpa, right?
An amazing
which is a city
definitely worth a visit.
Which,
cool.
If you go to Nicaragua, I mean, you might only think about being in Managua, and if you do go to the Humberto Huembes market, it's one of the most fascinating markets that I've ever been into in Latin America. But Matagalpa is north of there, and then once you get to Matagalpa, you head east, northeast into the mountains. And so we're here in Matagalpa down here, and I'm gonna just do a quick zoom in. So what we do is we find that the Yasica River, which is where GIF is working, he just re-entered, so hopefully we'll be able to see him, is in this area here, right? And I spent a good deal of time in Nicaragua between 2014 and 2017. And a lot of the work that we did was up here around El Tuma and La Dalia. And one of the reasons why I mention it is if you go to the post for this bar, the page for this bar, here's a picture of the bag, and it says El Tuma La Dalia Matagalpa. And so I wanted people to be able to have a sense for where all this stuff was. Let me see if what I can do is add GIF to this. I can do it. Unfortunately, I still can't see his video or audio. But what I wanted to do in showing the map was to be able to show the where we are, where things are in Nicaragua. So one thing that many people may not know is that, Nicaragua had a really interesting reputation in colonial times for producing some of the best cacao in the Americas. So certainly for the French court, it was considered to be among the best. A lot of the varieties from Nicaragua went to Trinidad and became mixed into the Trinitarios. But it has been a real challenge to find the true ancient criollos. Nowadays, we have the Trinitarios that came back from Trinidad and were interbred to create new criollos, neo-criollos, or criollados, as I mentioned them. And if there's anything in this that is I'm misstating, please let me know in the chat, and we'll go, and Tom and I will address it. People may know the name Choco, XOCO Gourmet, Choco Gourmet, a guy by the name of Frank Homan. Frank was really, really involved with cacao in Nicaragua around, from early 2010s or so. And then Ingeman, a name that many other people know, took over that. And I understand from, I don't know it precisely, but I understand that GIF was involved in some of those endeavors as well. So there's this interesting connection. And I know that the mother trees that Ingeman used come from the El Tumiladalya area. So this area spreading from between Matagalpa through the Rio Yasica up to El Tumiladalya is, a nursery, a source for lots of interesting cocoa genetics. And as I said, from my research back in 2017, it is the source for much of the great cocoa that came out of the Americas in the 1700s. And here we are situated to Managua, the Lake Managua down here, and the Rio Yasica, and here's Matagalpa down here. And then if we sort of zoom out into all of Nicaragua, there we go, so you can get a sense of it. But I'm going to put a link to this map.
I have to say, I think you missed your calling as a geography teacher. You really,
well, it helps that I've been there.
Yes.
Right? And so this is the really important part. So also to the town of Granada, really, really, I mean, there's a sense in which people are sort of afraid of Nicaragua. They think of it as very dangerous. I mean, almost any place. I mean, is it as dangerous as El Salvador? I don't know that it is. But it's an extremely beautiful country. I mean, I remember having just one of the most breathtaking vistas I've ever seen in the drive from Matagalpa up to La Tuma. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yep. And I'm going to assume that if you've been out into the backcountry, that is your memory as well, Tom.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Great country. You should definitely visit. So at some point, I do want you to actually taste the chocolate. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah. We'll get there. I want to talk about that. So, right. So one of the things that, we know, or many of us know, is that, criollo is a word that just means from here, right. Native. Comida típica y criolla. Right. And so there's a lot of criollo, quote unquote, that was probably better thought of as abuelo or abuelito. This is what my grandfather grew. Right. And so I'm going to call it, I'm being very, very voluble in my motions. Yes. And my earpods are popping up with them. I'm so excited. That's right. And I think that, one of the things that we're talking about is that GIF, when he found these trees, realized that he had something very, very special. And so he went to USDA, Agricultural Research Service here in the United States, and had them tested. And what he found is genetically is in a cluster that is very, very, right there at the heart of actually ancient criollos, which is really, it's not 100% pure, almost nothing is. But it is there. So what are some of the challenges of working with these beans? I mean, I know from my work in Bolivia that the wild beans are very, very tiny, right? And that presents a whole host of challenges that are different. So, what sort of, in making the chocolate, you've got this, okay, I've got these beans. I've never used this size of beans. Maybe I've never used these beans before. I have to think about talk about the process of arriving at this bar.
Yeah. I mean, well, first, I think it's really important to note that we have never, up until now, we've been really careful to downplay genetic definitions. We don't like to advertise our chocolate as a particular genetic. And the reason for that is because, for the most part, as you know, all the genetics, it's a mix. All cacao is a mutt. It's some combination of various things. It's pretty rare. It's extremely rare for you to have one, I don't want to use the term pure, but one type of genetics that is so predominant you can say, yes, this is that. And it's also not something that we should be shooting for, because for farmers, it's not good for them to be planting, one particular thing. You get monoculture and you've got all the issues surrounding that. And plus, a lot of the clones that have been developed are disease resistant. So there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't be encouraging people to plant Criollo. Criollo, in particular, what's considered this particular genetic variety of Criollo, is not a particularly good producer, as Giff will attest. For all the trees he has, he only got one usable bag. And also, it doesn't produce. I mean, it doesn't produce. You look at the pods, and a lot of the beans are shriveled. They're not producing very well, and they're still very disease susceptible. And it's also something where not every farmer is going to have the ability to set aside a certain area of their farm just to have all these trees, this one genetic type there. This was really a labor of love from Giff. And so because of that, we felt comfortable saying, okay, it's been genetically tested. He's kept it separate. Something he is well aware of the challenges, the financial, repercussions, but it's something he wants to do. And, we love working with him. So yes, we will, we will try this. The bean itself, like you said, much smaller than a lot of the beans we work with. So that does present its own challenges. But other than that, it was our pretty standard process of doing test roasts and test grinds to see what we're working with and how the bean responds. The challenge being that we couldn't do many of them because we literally had one bag. So we didn't want to waste too much. So we went into the large grinder before we would have with any other bean. And we spent a lot more time overseeing that and modifying as we were going. I mean, we were tasting it every hour, and waking up in the middle of the night, like, hey, where is it now? And so, and honestly, in the future, I think that we would probably stop the conch a little bit earlier. Once we wanted to see how it developed, and we're like, what, it's going in a direction we don't want it to go, so we're going to stop it here. So I think we would change a couple things, but it's more nerve wracking because you've got this one bag, So
right. It's like, well, and it does talk a little bit about, especially, I think some of the circumstances that smaller makers do who may be less experienced than you, is that they become very, very tentative and hesitant working with an expensive input, right? And not worrying about it. Or not destroying it. So there's a tendency to be very, very gentle to the point of like they haven't quite tweaked the roast properly, and they don't want to let it go because they're afraid of, conching out, all of the goodness that they're trying to find. And this is the first time. This is the first time we're doing it. I remember speaking with Sepp Schoenbeckler. I don't know if you know that name, but he's the head chocolate maker at Veltlin in Switzerland. Okay. And they were talking about the first year that they did the Cru Sauvage back in 2005, 2006, and they were using an old Lehmann, Melanger. And he said they were sleeping next to the Melanger for the course of the 3 days.
Right.
Not the Melanger. The conch, the Lehmann conch. They were sitting next to the Lehmann conch for like 3 days, just testing it every hour to make sure that they weren't over conching it. So I really, really do get to this whole, like, we don't have a lot of it. It's a delicate. We're not entirely sure what it's going to do for us, and therefore we need to be careful.
Too, because it's Giff's. He's been working on this for 10 years, and it's really meaningful, and we don't want to mess it up. So we were really happy when we got the final, and we could obviously from first tasting the beans, and then doing the test roast. We were really excited, and we were communicating with Giff all through the process. But as we saw it develop and tasted it develop, we got even more and more excited about it. So it was really cool to be like to be thinking, this is a flavor of cacao that people maybe haven't tasted for a really long time. It wasn't something we'd ever really tasted before either. So that was really exciting.
Right. And so this is the cut test. And so for people who have never seen a really predominantly white bean cocoa, right, in a cut test, this is quite different from what the normal color looks like in the distribution of fermentation. So
Yeah.
it's exciting to me. And also, I mean, not just because it's a criollo doesn't mean it's going to make good chocolate. I mean, was that ever a concern that these might be really, really interesting beans, but are we going to be able to make good chocolate
Oh
out of
yeah,
it is another
absolutely. We
question.
had no idea going into it if it was going to be something that was going to taste any good, and that was part of but we were up for anything, and
Right.
yeah, it was really about, I lost my train of thought. You were talking about something and then you went on and I forgot what you were talking about.
Yeah, but it's the nature of going live. Interrupt me if the thought comes back. But while we're thinking about that, what I want to do is I want to get to some comments from people in the live stream. If you're watching live, you can go into the comments on LinkedIn or Facebook or into the live chat on YouTube, and you put the comments in. We'll get them up on screen. If you have questions about any of this for Tom, we'll put the questions up on screen and you can get to those as well. So from Mark at Blue Spruce Chocolates in Kittredge, Colorado, a care package from Goodnow Farms. He's envious. And you should be. I got to say, it was a real pleasure to get this. So yeah, thanks very much for that. I also want to do a quick shout out. This is Michaela Shoup, is that correct, Tom? Michaela
Yes.
from Hanover and Denver.
So,
Chocolats Deluxe. Yeah, you responded, hi, Michaela, and I'm going, okay, must be Michaela Shoup from Germany. So Michaela, if you're in the chats, if you're in the episode still, thanks for joining today, as well as Frank Manteau. So Frank, thanks for giving us a shout out today. And Michaela says, yes, this is Michaela. So good. That's really, really good to know. So had you had, so I'm going to step back and make a personal aside here. And then what we'll do is we'll jump into the tasting. Do you have a bar yourself? Or am I the only one?
I probably should
have. Or do you have some?
I don't. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm the one who's going to. So I remember when I visited you last April. And you were very, very generous, and my daughter and I walked away with quite a selection. Is that when I posted about the visit, I mentioned that the Nicaragua bar of the single origins that we walked away with that day was my favorite. So what's the difference in terms of the beans between the Nicaragua bar that's part of the general line that you produce, right, and these beans, just so that people can get an idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's night and day. I think what I was going to say earlier is you mentioned they're very light beans, and the beans, the look of them is very similar to our Almendra Blanca bean, which is from Tabasco, Mexico. That's also a white bean. So we had the luxury of being able to understand a cut test on a light bean from having worked with that before. But night and day from the other beans that GIF is providing are from farms that are all around that Altoona Ladalia area. And they're more of a classic Trinitario, all kinds of mixes of genetics. I wish that, look, we're getting a phone call. I wish GIF was here because he could tell you more about the genetics. He's really good with that. But it's a wide variety. And we actually get our beans from a small subset of farms within the area he gets his beans. He works with hundreds of farmers there. And the reason we do that is because there's less genetic variation. We get more consistency and flavor. We can work with the beans the same way every time. So those beans, they're different color. They're purple. They're dark. They have a much more earthy. It's like a caramelly raisin, very deep, dark, chocolatey flavor to them. And you said it was one of your favorites. Like just that earthiness is something that I've always gravitated towards. If I had to pick a favorite, it's between the El Carmen. We call it the El Carmen. That's the area, the town in Altoona Ladalia, which is the area the beans come from. And our, oh geez, why am I blanking? We're going down to visit Freddie Salazar, Costa Esmeralda's cacao. So our
Gotcha.
Esmeralda's cacao is a variation on a Nacional, and also very different, but those two have just really deep, rich flavors, which I really enjoy. So this was very different because it's very subtle. You get those sort of strawberry flavors, those lighter flavors, the nut skins. It's just, and there's a lot of them. It's very complex, which is really Was
I'm
very
I'm
different.
looking forward. I'm looking forward to tasting it for that
Can't wait for you
reason.
to taste it.
Yeah, well, it's
Half
like
an hour later.
everybody's going through here, and it's just like, okay, we're going to salivate and make them wait. But let's talk about. I want to talk about that just a little bit because, um, when people think about, you know, chocolate and the flavor of chocolate. Let's go here. There's a tendency thing that the better beans make more, chocolate forward chocolate or cocoa forward chocolate. And and it turns out that no, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, if you've got an Amelanato forastero, which is the primary genetics in West Africa, you've got what we think of as chocolate flavor. Right. But with these beans which have a high percentage of Criollo parentage, you've got this set of flavors which is entirely different from. So your expectations need to be entirely different. So they tend to be more subtle. They tend to run towards, as you said, nut skins and things like that, as opposed to bang, smash in your face chocolate. So was that your expectation for this, or did you have some other expectation for this chocolate?
I think it was the expectation based on what we had heard about Criollos. And we typically don't, we're not of the mindset that it has to be more chocolate forward to be a good bean. We're always looking for really unique and interesting flavors. And I think that we take a very different approach than some people in terms of just the unique flavors. Because what we're really trying to do is, and I think a lot of craft chocolate makers are doing this, is just trying to get people to think of chocolate as a food as opposed to a candy. So it's reflecting the flavors of the beans it's coming from. So, we'll work very closely with people at Origin. There's one Origin I won't mention, but, we had a situation where they changed the fermentation profile of the beans that they were sending out. And we're like, well, why'd you do that? It's like, well, a lot of chocolate makers are coming down here saying we needed to do this. And we said, no, here's what we like, and here's why we like it. We don't care what anybody else thinks, and I think it is personal to anybody. If you're a chocolate maker, you have a personal thing you're going for, and those are the flavors that you want to focus on. And I think that part of the joy and the exploration of craft chocolate is tasting those and discovering them. You could take same bean from one chocolate maker and compare it to another, and they may be completely different. And that's awesome that it's like that.
Right. So I have a fine arts background. So I went to Rhode Island School of Design. And so I think about the fact that if you're going to be a chocolate maker, you should have an artistic sensibility. You should have an aesthetic. You should have, something that drives you in the way you think about making your chocolate. And, to your point, I think that the definition of a craft chocolate maker, compared with an industrial chocolate maker, is an industrial chocolate maker starts with the end idea in mind. So we know what the chocolate needs to taste like when we get done, and we're going to take every bean and we're going to push it in that direction no matter what.
It's just an input into a process. It has nothing to do with the actual chocolate beans themselves. Yeah.
Well, and the cut test is designed to say this distribution of fermentation resembles the distribution of fermentation I had last year, and so I know I can make the same chocolate from these beans. Right? And when you go to a craft chocolate maker, the idea is how do we express the unique flavor potential that the beans present us, and so it is an intent. It's not a scale. It's nothing about the process. It's about an intent. And so I don't know what your thought is about thinking about the difference between craft and industrial that way, because if people who followed my work over the last couple of years know that getting down to the way we use words is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one. I would probably come down as a small chocolate maker. I would say the only intent with mass market chocolate is just profit. I mean, I don't see any other intent on that. I mean, I look at mass market chocolate to real chocolate as Velveeta is to real cheese. You've got this highly processed product, has a monotone flavor and just a lot of additives. And that's what it seems to me mass market chocolate for the most part is. And so it's just a very different, it's exactly what you said about the craft chocolate makers just drawing out the flavors of the beans, where, I mean, with mass market, once you're sucking all the cocoa butter, you're alkalizing it to take out all the flavor, there's nothing left of the chocolate. It's a candy product. So that's why, as I said before, like, we're trying to focus on this as a food.
Agreed. So a lot of stuff is pasteurized, processed chocolate food product.
Right.
right? Which
Exactly.
is
They can't call
go for it.
Legally, they can't call it cheese,
Right.
but
So,
they can call this
right.
stuff.
Well, yeah, we could say, is Cadbury Dairy Milk the Velveeta of chocolate? We could, or Hershey's milk chocolate is the Velveeta
I'm not naming
Velveeta
any
tea.
brand names, but you're welcome to if you like to.
But listen, this is why I am who I am. Can I say that? So, Mark over at Blue Spruce wants to know: can you share the general outlines of the roast you finalized? So
Yeah.
I'm assuming EOR is end of roast.
Hang on, let me look at this comment here. Where are we?
Oh, let me put it up on the screen again. So you should be able to see it up on the screen.
Okay, got it. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that generally the approach we took to this roast isn't much different than the approach we take for all of our roasts. I think in general, I feel like a lot of cacao gets over roasted. We tend to do it low and slow, particularly if we're working with a bean for the first time. I mean, obviously you can always go a little higher and a little more. You can't back it off. So especially with the one bag, we basically got, I think it was 3 roasts out of it, or so. So there wasn't a lot of room for error. So it was just low and slow. I mean, that's the general. I'm not sure what EOR means. What I should know that. What is EOR, for example?
End of roast. So what temperature are you hitting?
Oh, the temperature. Okay, so so
I'm guessing EOR is end of roast.
Yeah. No, we stay in the it's in the mid 300s, and I think that probably without giving away.
And for all you Europeans out there, that's 300 Fahrenheit, not 300
Fahrenheit.
centigrade.
Yes. Right. No, it's centigrade. Try roasting your beans at 300 degrees centigrade and see what happens.
You can try. Right. And if I recall correctly, you're using a combi oven. Is that correct? Rather than a drum roaster. Do you have a drum roaster?
Yeah, we are using a drum roaster. Yeah, we've got a. We've always used drum. We love the drum roaster. It's nice, even roast, and we check the temperature of all the beans, and so it works really well for us.
No, I was just trying to remember back, and it was one of those details that had not stuck in my mind. So I wanted to make sure. So
it's a modified rotisserie, actually. So but it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's from a company that is headquartered in Atlanta.
No, it was from Cacao Cucina, actually, which was Florida.
Okay.
And they don't exist anymore. They retired. So we're hoping
they sold. Yeah.
Yeah.
BLT, not bacon, lettuce, and tomato, but Bottom Line Technologies, sold the business a couple of years ago. All right. So what I want to do, Tom, is I want to recognize a couple of comments from Michaela, right? But I want to do it after I have the opportunity to taste this. So you can see the comments in the comment stream. Mm-hmm. So the first one is because it is made from a light bean chocolate, a nearly white bean chocolate, what I would say is that my expectation is that the outcome of this would be something that actually looks like a milk chocolate, which is to be expected. If this were any darker than this, I would sort of wonder if it were over roasted. Okay, so when you have a good white bean chocolate, expect it to look like you would expect a milk chocolate to do this. I have to say, Michaela, that I am slightly red-green colorblind. And so I'm under an LED light, which is I can change the color temperature of. And so my color sensibility is completely off here. And so I would say that it is on the warm side as opposed to on the cool side here. Right. So I don't know how reddish it is, but it is warm brown as opposed to cool brown. Very, very definitely. It has a complex aroma. It is subtle. There is, I get the fruit on the nose, but there is this base to it, which reminds me of. No, it's not. I'm having. Oh, I wonder if it reminds me more of sweet cashews, if that makes sense.
Cashews, one of those. Monica gets a lot of cashews out of that.
Right. And I
I'm
want
gonna,
to let
I'm
you
gonna
know.
go grab a bar. I'll be right back. I'll be
Okay,
back.
so while we're waiting for Tom to come back, I'm going to go and spend a little more time thinking about this. I mean, right, I get to be really geeky about this, and people who know what it is that I've done know that I like to. Man, it's got just a fabulous snap, and working on the brake, it's actually more complex. I mean, it's really, you don't always get a whole lot more complexity on the brake. Sometimes you do. There's a base into it. It's a little darker, richer. I think is a good way to think about it. I'm gonna put my thumb on the back of this and warm it up. Right, so I'm going to try, because it's actually fairly chill here in the room that I am. I had to turn the heater on because it was like 55 degrees in the house when I woke up.
We always have a really crisp snap because we add, the freshly pressed cocoa butter. So there's quite a bit of cocoa butter in these bars.
Right. No, and which I prefer. I mean, anybody who knows me know that my first introduction to single origin chocolate was Bona, and so I'm a huge fan of lots of added cocoa butter. I mean, I'm not a fan of 2-ingredient 70% chocolate, cocoa beans ground up with sugar. So yeah, no, it's got this wonderful snap. It's what? Right. Is this your first chocolate of the day? I'm guessing not. I mean,
no, I eat so much chocolate, it's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah. One of the hazards of the job.
Mm-hmm. I'm very shiny. Makeup.
Yeah.
Last looks, everybody.
Well, if you may look closely, you'll see chocolate on the other side of my nose. So
that's what that is. I was wondering. Okay.
Which naturally dulls the skin and moisturizes simultaneously. Right. It has a very firm but straightforward bite. You bite through it, which is what I would expect from the snap. Boom. Right. And it's a very clean. When you bite and you chew, you get two different sensations of texture. And so I do recommend biting and chewing. Right. But it's, there's no graininess to this whatsoever. I mean, so, the refining on this is really, really well done. The melt is clean and smooth. And I would say, oh, wow. I mean, the evolution of flavor from the front, which has got this aromatic fruitiness, which is way up here, it comes into the back as the fat. You notice I was worrying the chocolate against my tongue, right? And moving it back, it's all of a sudden it goes from that fruitiness into something which is got the nuttiness that we've been talking about. There's often a lot of astringency associated with nut skins, not just the flavor, and there's zero astringency here.
This was a little
really
when we started working.
Sorry?
With it. Well, this was a little astringent when we started working with it, and Giff and I talked about that, and we were able to decrease that a little bit, which was nice.
Yeah, no, I understand. So Michaela says it has a soft break. I wish I could talk here. Michaela, part of the challenge is
I wish you could too.
Right. Part of the challenge is that
she was at the International Chocolate Awards with us in Florence. It was really nice.
Yeah. So if I don't know that I had your email address handy, and I don't know if Tom, if you have it, you can send it to me into the private chat. Yeah. What I can then do is I can send her the studio link, and then she could join us. I'm not going to put the studio link and make it public.
Okay.
But I could send you, Michaela, if you have a microphone and you have a camera, I can certainly invite you in to this. So when I say this as I'm sorry?
I just sent it to you in the chat.
Okay. So I'm going to copy the link address. Hold everybody. Tom, why don't you talk about the chocolate while I'm emailing the studio link over to Michaela so she can join us.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, it was a really exciting bar when we were finally finished with it and we knew we had, it was just really exciting to know we had this really special thing. We talked with GIF a lot, and actually we were so excited about it. We were going to the Northwest Chocolate Festival a couple of weeks after the bar was finished. And so we talked to GIF and said, look, why don't you come up and join us? Because we would love to have you talk about the bar. And so he changed his plans. He was out doing some consulting work in Asia. And on the way back, he changed his flight. He flew up to Washington, joined us. And as luck would have it, FCIA had us giving a speech on the main stage at Northwest. It was actually Monica who was there, not me. And so we kind of turned this into a Yasica talk, because at the awards the night before, this bar won Best in Show at the Northwest Festival for dark chocolate. So that was just really, there's not a lot of opportunities in chocolate, I think, or just people who are trying really hard and spending a lot of time and effort, toiling away in obscurity, making these really cool things and doing this great work. And for it to be acknowledged like that, for GIF to be able to be up on that stage and people to see what he had done and taste it for themselves and recognize it, it was just a really satisfying moment. And I think that these are the kind of things that just we as chocolate makers and the chocolate industry as a whole really need to do more of, so that we can communicate better how what we're doing is different and why it's important, so people can appreciate that and understand there's a reason why there's a cost to this. There's a reason why this is $35, a reason why craft chocolate in general is more than your $2 mass market chocolate bar. So these are the kind of things that I think it was really satisfying to be able to experience that.
No, I completely and totally agree with you. And one of the things I mentioned in the email back and forth was, since about 2012, I've been promoting something which I call the $100 bar of chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need, what I think we as an industry need to get to, is bars where we agree, right, among us, that the chocolate in and of itself,
mm-hmm.
right, has that value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, thinking about $35 is like, we need a lot more of these. So, hey, Michaela, welcome. Hey, how are you today?
Hello.
Hey, Michaela.
Okay. So, this is the first time I've ever invited somebody in on an impromptu basis. Happy to make it happen.
Be careful. So swears like a sailor, so just be careful.
Okay. Well, and I'm probably the last time I saw you was in Amsterdam a bunch of years ago, maybe 2019 or 2020 at Chocoa. But what I want to do is I want to say, my room where I am sitting right now, you'll notice that I'm wearing a vest. So it's probably maybe 16 or 17 degrees centigrade in here. And so one of the reasons why this has got a rather sharp break is because it's just so cold here. If it were a little bit warmer, above 20, it might be a little different. So, you make some really, really nice flavor identifications in here. I put it up on the screen. So why don't you talk about, were you at the Northwest Chocolate Festival, or did you ask these guys to send you some?
Okay. I have to make it one day. But
so you ordered some and they shipped it to her. Okay.
Well, we saw her at the International Chocolate Awards, so we gave her some there.
Okay. In Italy. Okay.
That's why I was able to taste it. And I finished it nearly all.
That's easy to do. Yeah.
So I do like it, yes.
So the notes of cognac, right? Mm-hmm. Dark red fruit, woody, creamy and rich, beautiful roast. Light, mild, you wouldn't think it's a 70% bar. So, one thing I did, just so that people know, is I did link to the page on the Goodnow Farms website, so you can go and take a look at the tasting notes that they put on there, which are a little bit different. So Michaela, if I can, what was it about this bar that sort of you found the most surprising? I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the work of Goodnow Farms in general, right? So was there anything, and you've probably had a bunch of other bars that claim to be from Criollo beans. So, what was your sense of this that, was different or surprising, or however you want to?
I think it's surprisingly clean. I would say. So you can, for me, you can clearly identify different aromas and flavors. So a very dark red fruit, which I like. So the fruitiness is coming out very nicely. But also the woody flavors, which I like. So and the cognac. That's what reminds me of a cognac.
So yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know that I would have gone there myself, just sort of unaided, but I completely understand where it is that you're coming from. And when we talk about red fruit, but without a lot of red fruit acidity. I mean, the flavors are there, but when we think about what a strawberry is and how acidic it could be, or a raspberry and how
No,
acidic.
it's not. It's not. It's like plum. It's like dark red fruit. It's not like berries. It's dark, or maybe even grapes. Dark grapes.
Yeah, it's not an acidic bean at all. There's very little acidity.
Yeah.
So what I would say that my impression about this, having broken off maybe a fifth of the bar and in small pieces, is this is one of those bars where what you want to do is you want to pay attention to eating it, and you don't want to pair it with anything else.
No.
Right? That there's a subtlety to it and a delicacy to it that, if you were to put it with a cognac or a port or anything like that, it would completely overwhelm, what the bar is doing. Right. And it's a bar that when you do pay attention to it, it rewards your paying attention to it, because there are a lot of bars where you focus on it and you go, there's not much there.
Right.
And my experience of it,
say though, I really enjoy pairing chocolate with cheese. So I think a mellow, I mean, obviously this is not like, blue cheese or something, or mimolette or something really intense, but with something more mellow, I think there might be a nice flavor combination there. Because I'm always looking for what is more than how do you get more than the sum of its parts? You get those flavor combinations that become this really unique thing. So if somebody wants to eat their $35 bar with some cheese,
well, what I might say is with the second half of your $35 bar, or your second $35 bar, but go through and understand it before you start pairing it. You're right. I mean, I could think of a number of different ways of cheese combinations. My brain is firing off in that direction right now. But what I'm doing right now is I'm enjoying that when I put something in my mouth, it's been less than a minute since my mouth is cleared, that the next small piece is going to taste slightly different from the previous piece. And so what I'm getting is I'm getting this evolution of flavor over time in my mouth as the fat warms up and it's releasing all these aroma molecules, which is what happens, right? Where the sugar comes in, all these things. But while there's fat in my mouth, right, if I go try another piece, right, it's a different flavor sensation.
Right.
And so I'm sorry for the crunching noise if anybody can hear me crunch on it. I'm enjoying that slightly different flavor sensation every time I put. And I'm sitting here talking to you, and what I really want to do is I want to sit here and go, right, close my eyes and enjoy it in a very, very different way.
But
so,
I think I would compare, or I would pair this chocolate with maybe even with a light whiskey and red wine.
Yep.
I think you could.
Yeah, I think you could, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about red wines, the universe of red wine varietals, right? And I'm thinking just within the German wine tradition between Ausleses and Trockenbeeren Ausleses and things like that. There's a place where I could go, Riesling this and that. What you probably just said is that a lot of this is my thinking of this would be interesting with white wines, right? Not necessarily red wines, which is sort of counterintuitive. A lot of people automatically think dark chocolate and red wine. And I like dark chocolate. I like to play with dark chocolate and white wines. So what I want to do is we're about 5 minutes before the end. It's like, boom, the time has really gone as I knew it would. And Michaela, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a real special treat.
My pleasure.
And oh yeah, no, it's great. And hopefully, my travels will take me to Europe sometime in the next couple of months. We'll have it, and you'll be in the same place, and we'll have a chance to do that. So are you planning, Tom, to do this again? Are we going to see?
We very much would like to do this again. Giff was saying he may have another small harvest coming up, and he might be able to get maybe even a half bag, which we'd be happy to do that. His plan is to continue doing this, and hopefully to, if he can, maybe even increase production a bit. So we'll do this every year as long as he's doing it. And one thing I should note too, you had mentioned the $100 chocolate bar. By all rights, this certainly could be a $100 chocolate bar. The amount of time and effort, money that Giff has put into this, he will never make that back. So whatever we can give him, he certainly deserves all of it and more. But then there's the conversation about, we want this to be accessible to people too. So just trying to find a balance there too.
Right. And what I would say that, the bulk of the Goodnow Farms inventory is accessible. I mean, this is the sort of idea. So, I can have a special reserve, and this is part of the special reserve collection that you put together, right. And that based on scarcity, and this is not artificial scarcity, it's real scarcity, that the price reflects not just the scarcity, but the uniqueness of the flavor that's going on. And I think what's really, really important when I talk about that, and Michaela, let me know what you think as well, is that there are a number of chocolates out there that are extremely expensive, but a lot of the retail price is based on what I think of as gimmicks in the packaging. They have $100 worth of packaging that they need to amortize. Some fancy wooden box, without naming a brand name, a fancy wooden box with wooden tweezers, which has nothing to do with anything except speak to a luxury premium product and price point, right? But when you take the chocolate out of that box and just taste it, does it really match up to the price point? I don't know. Which is why I think we need a lot more experiments like this. So I want to say, good on you, right? I really do appreciate that, and really want to see not only you, Goodnow Farms, producing more of this, right? More of these kinds of bars at this price point. I don't know how many you made. But you sold it out relatively quick.
It was around 700. That was one bag. But I want to point out, because I think this is important, and this is a larger conversation for a different time. But yes, our price point is accessible from a craft chocolate standpoint. If you look at what other bars in the market are charging, however, it's accessible for an affluent market, and that typically means, just based on this country, white people. And, I think that we all need to just understand as chocolate makers what it is we're doing, because you look at all the inequities in the supply chain, how we're trying to work with that to be able to compensate farmers fairly for what they're doing. But then what happens on the other side of the supply chain? When you have an $18 chocolate bar, there are a lot of people who can't afford that. So this is a larger conversation that needs to be had in the craft chocolate world about that. But I just want to be careful to say that, this is accessible to a small slice of people.
I'm going to have my last word on that, but I want to have, Michaela, part of your business at Chocolats Deluxe in Germany is selling chocolate. And so, what's your thought about this price point?
We just got our first shipment from Tom. So
glad you got it. I wasn't sure if you got it, so I'm glad it arrived.
No, it did arrive just 2 days ago, and it went through customs smoothly. So everything is all right. But I think, maybe we are one of the few shops in Germany, or maybe even Europe, that do sell those expensive bars. But I think a lot of salespeople are also scared or afraid to sell at a high price point. The first argument they have with the producer is it's too expensive. That's always easy to say. So if you want to value the product and everything, all the work that's behind it, you have to accept a higher price, and a lot of our clients are happy to pay for it. They've been waiting for them. So it's the same. You can have the same discussion about expensive cars. That's the same thing. Basically.
Almost anything. So my thought about this is, and I need to modify this, and I've yet to find a good way to do it. But up until about a year ago, I would say the Queen of England, with all her chocolate, can't buy better chocolate than I can. Right. So there's this really interesting leveling. I mean, she could buy a lot better wine than I can. Right. She can buy swans, and I can't buy swans. Right. But there is this sense in which, with great wealth, there is access to a lot of stuff. But when it comes to chocolate, she can't buy better chocolate than I can. And I think that's pretty cool. And what I can do is, if I have a $20 or €20 or a 20-pound note, right, I can walk into a chocolate shop and choose from among the world's best chocolates for that $20 or 20-pound or €20 note. And maybe the only other food I can do that with is cheese. Right. So I think there's a parallel there. But if I'm looking for the best coffee in the world, I might be spending $100 a pound on just green coffee beans, right, that won a cup of excellence. Right. I'm going to be spending, thousands of, a bottle of Louis XIII is what, $5,000, $6,000. I mean, it's hugely expensive. And when we think about the dynamics of wine, for example, it's like the $100 bottle of wine makes the $20 bottle of wine seem really affordable, right? And it's the $1,000 bottle of wine that makes the $100 bottle of wine seem affordable. But interestingly, I think more to the point is that for the $1,000 bottle of wine, the cost of production isn't actually that much greater. So it has to do with perception of value of, who's making the wine as much as it is of anything, right? But what it does is it says that there's enough money in the system so that there's somebody who can tell you why it's okay to spend $1,000 for a bottle of wine, right, as opposed to 20, right? And I think that the dynamic for chocolate is that by moving some items up the price scale, right, what we can do is we can make that what people are thinking of as a $9, $10, $11 bar of chocolate, which seems outrageously expensive to most people. What it can say is, in fact, it's really, really affordable in some respects. It may not be something I have every day. It may not be something I have every week, but when I want to go and splurge, it's not out of the ordinary. And so I'm sort of wondering, as we close out, because we're past the hour, Tom, what your thoughts are, Michaela, what your thoughts are. We have one or two more comments before we close out.
I think this is a very white conversation, but look, there's a lot that we need to do, and there are so many issues in this country, and it's just something that I struggle with as somebody who's making a product that is the price point that it is. And again, a much larger conversation. I will say that, right now we're focused on trying to work as closely with our farmers as we can to make sure that they're being compensated fairly, to help them with the things they're struggling with, which include climate change. That's a real big problem right now, as well as other things. There's, again, a much larger conversation, but all the ridiculousness about cadmium that has, hurt a lot of small producers, and it's completely meaningless. I just had my physical and I had my cadmium tested, and I eat, for the past 20 years, I've had the equivalent of 2-3 chocolate bars a day. I drink cacao tea, I eat beans, below detectable level, undetectable. So it's just all the stuff that we're up against as an industry to try and make things better for so many people. We're just focusing on that.
Well, I don't disagree. With you. Right. So Michaela, your thoughts as well, based on what it is that Tom has said.
Well, I agree with him, and also we could carry on with this conversation for weeks, I guess, or months, or even longer. And I also think we need to do and explain both to everybody, because chocolate is still new to people. They have no idea what this type of chocolate is like, what is the work behind it, what is the quality, and all that. So it's a completely different story than anything you can buy in the supermarket around the globe. It doesn't matter where. It's always the big players, the big brands that are around, and they have brainwashed the people, and maybe not brainwashed, but that's what people are used to simply, and they don't know, they have not discovered this type of chocolate yet. And this is part of my job. That's what I try to do, to explain and what this is.
Yeah, I think that I would present it brainwashed. I would say we have become accustomed to chocolate being inexpensive, to chocolate being cheap, right? And that dynamic, which has been both created and is perpetuated, is a cycle that needs to be broken. There is no real reasonable reason for chocolate always to be cheap, or chocolate to be as cheap as it is. However it came to be. Well,
if we have to break the circle, that's brainwashing. Anyway.
All right.
I don't know who Jeffrey Gardner is, but he's telling us to stop. So maybe we're she. So we should probably.
Well, I don't know if he. Well, Chef. He's actually, he owns a small chocolate maker. He's a confectioner in Torrance, California. So Torrance is just outside LA for people who don't know that.
Yeah,
so you have wines at different price points. Wise, some offer better flavor. Brilliant marketing. Hope it's the flavor. He'll watch it later today. I think the stop is in end of message, not asking us to stop. I'm hoping that's the base. He says he's on the same page with us in that way. So it's been really good with all of that. So what I want to do is say to the three of you, thank you very much for joining me today. I am, the three of you, the third one being GIF. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to overcome the technology barriers that came from connecting from in the middle of nowhere in Nicaragua. It happens sometimes, more often than we like to admit, as a matter of fact. What I do want to close out with today, as I do, is this is the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. Episodes of PodSafe Chocolate like this one are sponsored and supported by members of The Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, you can go here right now. I'm logged in, so it says account. If you're not logged in, it will say join. You can click, there's a free membership. You can support the work we're doing. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, thumbs up, all those kinds of things. Really do appreciate it. And I want to sign off.
I need to become a member. I don't think I'm a member.
Well, just click the join button. Right. Okay. If I do it here, if I do it here, what it'll do is it'll show my account page. But just click on the join button.
I'll do that.
There's always been a free membership, right? So since I started this in 2008, there's always been a free membership. If you want to support it financially, you can. It's not a requirement, but any show of support is a great thing. And what I want to do is, one of the reasons why I started on PodSafe Chocolate was I wanted to, have discussions. And Tom, you started them today. It's like, we're talking about this. It's a very producing country, right? Or a consuming country, as opposed to white. It's a very consuming country issue, as opposed to a producing country issue, right? And what we need to do is we need to balance this discussion. And so PodSafe Chocolate is, the fact that we can have this discussion of chocolate is dependent upon, the millions, 15 million or so cocoa farming families, somewhere between 60 and 70 million people whose lives depend on consuming cocoa. And what comes to this notion of PodSafe Chocolate is, what is it that I'm going to commit to help save chocolate going forward, right? And so coming out of this discussion, right, for me, the commitment that I'm going to make this week, next week, the week after, right? So coming out of international cocoa diplomacy last year was like, diplomacy is not one day a year thing. It's something you need to do all the time. So the commitment that I have is to engage in more of these conversations, getting closer to the farm, so that what people can do is, by connecting with the makers and the connection the makers have with their farmers, right, they will have a better understanding of the humanity, the issues that are associated with producing cocoa, which makes the chocolate that we all love and we all enjoy and we all share through episodes of PodSafe Chocolate. And with that, I'm going to sign off for today, saying thanks very much to Tom. Thanks, Michaela. GIF, sorry things didn't work out. And to remind everybody, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you are doing it wrong. Until the next time, everyone.